The anonymous submission by Clara Beaumont, Chapter 1, Ink and Nerve. Charlotte Greene stared at the letter for a long time before she opened it. The envelope sat on her desk like a dare. Thick cream paper, no return address, her name written in slow, deliberate ink that looked almost indecently confident. Whoever wrote it had taken their time. The letters curled with patience and intention, every stroke steady, almost intimate. Charlotte leaned back in her chair and dragged a hand through her dark hair. The office around her hummed with the quiet rhythm of late evening. Most of the staff had already left Whitaker and Hale Publishing, leaving the floor dim and echoing with the distant clack of a cleaning cart somewhere down the hall. She should have gone home an hour ago. Instead, she sat there, staring at the envelope like it might bite. "Jesus," she muttered under her breath. Charlotte Greene was not the type to get rattled by paper. She was 32, sharp as a blade, and had clawed her way up to senior acquisitions editor through a mix of ruthless instincts and an ability to read people better than they read themselves. Authors either loved her or feared her, sometimes both. Her reputation in the industry was simple. Charlotte Greene did not waste time. And yet here she was, staring, because this was the fourth letter. The first one had arrived 2 weeks ago. It had been slipped under her office door sometime overnight, left where she would find it first thing in the morning. No name, no explanation, just a single page of handwritten text that had made her throat dry before she even reached the bottom. You sit at your desk like you own the room, legs crossed slowly, heels swinging just enough to make a man wonder if you know what you're doing to him. She had assumed it was some creep from the building, some idiot trying to be clever. But the next letter had come 2 days later, then another. Each one longer, each one more precise, each one describing things that were uncomfortably accurate. How she twisted a strand of hair around her finger when she was annoyed. How she bit the inside of her cheek while reading manuscripts. How she leaned forward when she argued, eyes bright and voice low, like she was daring someone to push back. Whoever wrote them had been watching her closely. The disturbing part was not that she felt threatened. It was that the letters were good, dangerously good. Charlotte picked up the envelope and turned it over. The paper felt expensive, smooth beneath her fingertips. She exhaled slowly. "Fine," she murmured. "Let's see what the hell you've got this time." Her finger slipped beneath the seal and tore it open. The letter slid out in a single folded sheet. She unfolded it. Her eyes moved across the first line, then stopped. "Charlotte, you pretend you're unshakable." Her jaw tightened slightly. The handwriting was the same as before, controlled and confident, each letter leaning forward just enough to feel deliberate. "You sit in meetings and dismantle grown men with a raised eyebrow and a sentence that sounds polite but lands like a punch. I've watched you do it twice this week." Charlotte leaned forward slowly in her chair. "You intimidate people without trying. That sharp mouth, that calm stare, the way you tilt your head like you're measuring whether someone is worth your patience." A small pulse flickered under her skin. Her eyes continued down the page. "But here's the thing you don't realize. Confidence like yours has a crack in it." Charlotte's lips parted slightly. "You hide it well, but I see it. The moment after everyone leaves the conference room. The moment when your shoulders drop and you breathe out slowly, like you're letting the armor slide off for a second." Charlotte felt a strange heat move through her chest. She kept reading. "You think nobody notices those moments. You're wrong." Her fingers tightened on the paper. Whoever wrote this had seen things they should not have seen. "I wonder sometimes what would happen if someone actually challenged you. Not professionally." "You're too good at that game. I mean something else." Charlotte swallowed. "What would happen if someone pushed you just enough to make that composure crack? Would you fight, or would you enjoy it?" Her pulse thudded once, hard. She exhaled through her nose. "Cocky bastard," she muttered. Her eyes moved to the final lines. "You don't know who I am yet, but you will. And when you do, Charlotte, I have a feeling that sharp mouth of yours might finally run out of clever things to say. Sleep well tonight, I'll be watching." The letter ended there. Charlotte sat very still. Then she let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Okay," she said quietly to the empty office. "Well, that's new." She folded the paper once, slowly. Her brain was already running through possibilities. Someone in the building, someone who had access after hours, Someone observant enough to watch her without being obvious about it. A coworker, an author, a security guard. Her gaze drifted toward the glass wall of her office. The hallway beyond was empty, the overhead lights dimmed to half brightness. Charlotte stood up. Her heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor as she walked to the door and opened it. The corridor stretched both directions, silent. A few office doors stood open with lights off inside. The cleaning cart she had heard earlier was now parked near the elevators. No sign of anyone. She leaned against the doorframe. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she murmured. A slow smile touched the corner of her mouth. Because the truth was, she was too. The letters were unsettling. They were invasive. They were also the most interesting thing that had happened to her in months. Charlotte stepped back into her office and picked up the page again. Her eyes traced the handwriting once more. Firm strokes. Confident pressure. This was not someone timid. This was someone who liked control. Her mind flickered through faces. Editors, assistants, writers who had been in the building recently. Then one particular image surfaced, uninvited. Noah Whitaker. Charlotte leaned back in her chair again. The thought made her snort softly. "No," she said out loud. "That would be ridiculous." Noah Whitaker owned the company, technically co-owned it, but everyone knew the truth. Whitaker and Hale ran on Noah's instincts and his money. Hale handled the public side of things. Noah handled everything else. Charlotte had only interacted with him a handful of times. Each interaction had been memorable. He was tall enough to make most men look slightly smaller by comparison, somewhere around 6'3". Broad shoulders that filled out his tailored suits with careless authority. Dark hair that always looked slightly disordered. Like he'd run a hand through it 5 minutes ago and never bothered fixing it. And his eyes, cold gray most of the time. Sharp, observant. The kind of eyes that made people feel like they were being evaluated whether they liked it or not. Charlotte had argued with him during a manuscript meeting last month. She remembered that vividly. He had leaned back in his chair, one arm resting along the back, watching her with an expression that had hovered somewhere between irritation and fascination. "You're stubborn," he had told her calmly. "You're wrong," she had replied. A slow smile had touched his mouth. "I usually win these arguments." Charlotte had shrugged. "Try harder." And the room had gone quiet after that. And Noah Whitaker had laughed, not politely, actually laughed. Charlotte rubbed her temple now. No, there was no way. The man ran a publishing empire. He did not spend his evenings writing anonymous letters about how she crossed her legs in meetings. Still, her eyes drifted to the door again. The office felt different tonight, charged somehow. Like the air held a question that had not been answered yet. Charlotte folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. "All right," she said softly. "If you want a game." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a blank sheet of stationery. The paper slid beneath her hand. For a moment, she just stared at it. Then she picked up her pen. The ink flowed easily across the page. To my anonymous observer, she paused. A slow, dangerous smile curved across her mouth. "If you're going to watch me this closely, the least you can do is introduce yourself." Her pen hovered for a second. Then she added another line. "Or are you afraid that once I know who you are, the mystery disappears, and all that's left is an overconfident man with too much time on his hands?" Charlotte tapped the pen lightly against the desk. Her pulse felt strangely alive. "Either way, if you're going to keep writing me these letters, you should know something. I don't scare easily." She signed nothing, just folded the paper once and slid it into a blank envelope. Charlotte stood up and walked into the hallway. The office floor was still empty. She crouched near the base of her own door. Then she slid the envelope underneath it. A quiet challenge. She straightened slowly. Her heart was beating faster now. "Your move," she murmured. Down the hall, unseen around the corner, a tall man stood very still in the shadow near the stairwell. Noah Whitaker watched her through the narrow gap between the wall and the glass. His gray eyes were fixed on the envelope now lying on the floor inside her office. A slow grin spread across his face. "Well," he said quietly to himself, "that's going to be fun. You have not enough humanizer words left. Upgrade your surfer plan." Chapter 2. The man in the hallway. The envelope was gone by morning. Charlotte noticed it before she even reached her desk. Her office door stood slightly ajar. just enough for the soft overhead lights to spill across the floor. She stepped inside, dropping her leather bag on the chair, eyes moving immediately to the strip of hardwood near the door. Nothing there. The envelope she had slid underneath the night before had vanished. A slow smile pulled at her mouth. "Well," she murmured, someone had taken the bait. Charlotte moved toward her desk, heels clicking steadily. The morning sun stretched through the tall windows overlooking Manhattan, turning the office glass into mirrors and shadows. She sat down, opened her laptop, and then froze. Another envelope waited on top of her keyboard. Cream paper again. Her name written in the same infuriatingly confident script. Charlotte leaned back slowly in her chair, staring at it. "Jesus," she muttered. Whoever this guy was, he had balls. She picked up the envelope, turning it between her fingers. The seal had already been opened, like whoever left it wanted to make sure she saw it immediately. Charlotte slid the letter out. Her eyes began to move across the page. "Charlotte, that was bold of you." Her lips twitched, sliding a reply under your own door like a challenge. "I almost expected you to pin it to the conference room wall like a declaration of war." She leaned forward, elbows resting on the desk. "You're right about one thing. I am enjoying this." Her pulse gave a small, irritating kick. "You want to know who I am." "Fair. But where's the fun in handing you the answer immediately?" Charlotte scoffed quietly. "Of course," she said. "Still, I will give you something. You accused me of being an overconfident man with too much time on his hands. Not entirely wrong. But you're missing the part where you keep giving me reasons to watch you." Charlotte's eyebrows lifted slightly. She kept treating. "You walked into the office this morning with your hair tied and that loose knot you think looks professional. It doesn't. It makes the line of your neck look distracting, Michelle." Charlotte's gazes napped up instinctively. Her office door stood open. The hallway outside buzzed with normal morning noise, now. Assistants passing by, someone laughing near the break room, the distant clatter of keyboards, nobody watching her. She looked back down at the page. "And that skirt. The black one. You cross your legs when you're thinking. Slowly. You did it twice while reading this letter." Charlotte uncrossed her legs immediately. Her jaw tightened. "You smug asshole," she murmured, but heat flickered across her skin anyway. "Relax. If I wanted to make you uncomfortable, I could have done that already." Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper. "I'm not writing these letters to scare you. I'm writing them because you fascinate me." Charlotte leaned back again. Her eyes moved to the next line. "You carry yourself like you're untouchable, like nobody in the room has the right to challenge you. I want to see what happens when someone does." A faint pulse beat in her throat. "And judging by that reply, you left me last night, you might actually enjoy it." Charlotte exhaled slowly. She read the final lines. "So here's your hint. You already know me. You just haven't realized it yet." The letter ended there. Charlotte sat very still. Then she laughed, not softly, a real laugh, sharp and surprised. "You cocky son of a bitch," she said. Her brain was already turning over possibilities again. "You already know me." That narrowed the list. Employees, executives, authors who visited recently. Someone bold enough to slip into her office after hours. Here Yes drifted across the bullpen outside her glass walls. Editors hunched over desks, assistants answering phones. The usual chaos of a publishing house in full motion. Could be anyone. Charlotte folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her drawer. Then she stood up. If someone wanted to play games with her inside her own office, fine, but she was not going to sit quietly while they enjoyed the show. Charlotte stepped out into the hallway. "Morning, Claire," she said to the assistant at the reception desk. Claire looked up with a smile. "Morning, Charlotte." Charlotte leaned casually against the counter. "Quick question," she said. "Anyone come by my office early this morning?" Claire frowned slightly. "Before you got here?" "Yeah." Claire thought for a second. "Well, Mr. Whitaker came in around 7. Charlotte blinked. "Whitaker?" Claire nodded. "He stopped by your door, actually." Charlotte's stomach gave a strange little twist. "He did?" "Yeah, he was heading toward the conference room and paused there for a second. I thought he was going to knock, but then he just kept walking." Charlotte straightened slowly. "Oh," she said. "Interesting. Thanks." Claire smiled again and returned to her computer. Charlotte walked back toward her office. Thoughts spinning faster now, Noah Whitaker. Again. Coincidence? Probably. But still, she stepped inside her office and closed the door halfway. Her eyes drifted toward the executive floor above them, visible through the glass stairwell at the end of the corridor. Whitaker's office is up there. Corner suite. Glass walls, city view. Charlotte stared at the staircase for a long moment. Then she grabbed the letter from her drawer and headed upstairs. The executive floor was quieter, carpeted, expensive. The kind of place where voices stayed low and decisions worth millions happened over coffee. Charlotte walked down the hallway without slowing. She reached the corner office and knocked once before pushing the door open. Noah Whitaker's at behind a wide, walnut desk, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked up, gray eyes sharp. Charlotte paused for half a second. Every time she saw the man, the same thought flickered through her head. Christ, he's built like trouble. He looked exactly like she remembered. Tall, broad shoulders filling the dark shirt he wore today. Dark hair, slightly disordered, like he had been running his hands through it while working. The sleeves rolled back revealed strong forearms, dusted with dark hair. The kind of arms that suggested the man worked out not for appearance, but because he liked feeling strong. His gaze moved slowly over her, assessing. Then his mouth curved slightly. Well, Noah said, that was fast. Charlotte blinked. What? He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped across the backrest. I assumed you'd take at least a few hours before storming up here. Her heart skipped once. Storming up here. Charlotte slowly lifted the letter in her hand. You left this in my office. Noah glanced at it casually. Yes. Silence filled the room. Charlotte stared at him. You, she said slowly, have been writing those letters. Correct. That's no denial, no hesitation, just calm confidence. Charlotte felt something electric crawl down her spine. You've been watching me, she said. Yes? Her jaw tightened. That's incredibly inappropriate. Noah shrugged slightly. Probably. Charlotte took a step closer to the desk. You realize I could report you to the board. You could. His gray eyes held her steadily. Charlotte studied him. He did not look remotely concerned. You don't seem very worried about that. No. Why not? A slow smile spread across his mouth. Because you came up here alone instead of reporting me immediately. Charlotte felt heat rise under her skin. You arrogant prick. He laughed softly. Possibly. Charlotte planted her hands on the edge of his desk. Up close, he smelled faintly like cedar and something darker, clean, warm, dangerous. You think this is funny? No, Noah said quietly. I think it's interesting. His gaze dropped briefly to where her hands pressed against the desk, then moved back to her face. You could have ignored the letters, he continued. You didn't. Charlotte leaned closer. You were spying on me. I was observing. That's the same thing. Not exactly. Her eyes narrowed. You've got a hell of a nerve. That's been mentioned before. Charlotte held his gaze. The tension between them thickened. He did not look away, did not back down. Goddamn him. Her voice dropped slightly. Why me? Noah studied her face for a moment. Then he said something very simple. Because you challenge everything. Charlotte's breath slowed. You challenge authors. You challenge executives. You challenge me. His voice remained calm. But nobody challenges you. Charlotte felt something flicker in her chest. That doesn't answer the question. It does. His eyes held hers steadily. I wanted to see what would happen if someone did. Silence stretched between them. Charlotte straightened slowly. Her pulse beat louder now. You're unbelievable. I've heard that too. She crossed her arms. And what exactly did you expect to happen here? Noah leaned forward slightly. The movement brought him closer across the desk, close enough that she could see the faint stubble along his jaw, close enough to feel the intensity in his gaze. I expected you to walk in here exactly like you did, he said. Angry. Curious. A little intrigued. Charlotte scoffed. You're delusional. Am I? His eyes flicked briefly to her mouth, then back to her eyes. You haven't walked out yet. Charlotte, damn him. Her voice came out sharper. Maybe I'm deciding whether to slap you or report you. Both are options. His mouth curved slightly again. But you're still here. Charlotte stared at him. Something about the situation was completely insane, and yet the energy in the room crackled like a live wire. Finally, she exhaled sharply. You know what? What? If this is your idea of entertainment, Whitaker, you seriously need a hobby. He laughed again, low, warm. Possibly. Charlotte turned toward the door, but before she left, she glanced back at him. You're done writing me letters. Noah tilted his head slightly. Are you sure about that? Yes. He studied her for a second, then nodded slowly. All right. Charlotte narrowed her eyes. That was too easy. Maybe. She opened the door. Good, she said. Then she stepped into the hallway and walked away. Behind her, Noah Whitaker leaned back in his chair again. The grin that spread across his face this time was slow and wicked. "Yeah," he murmured quietly. "This is definitely going to get interesting." Chapter 3. Lines in the Sand. Charlotte lasted exactly 43 minutes before she started thinking about him again, which pissed her off immensely. She sat at her desk, pretending to review a manuscript submission, while her mind replayed the encounter upstairs in sharp, irritating detail. The stupid, calm look on Noah Whitaker's face. The way he had admitted everything without a flicker of hesitation. The confidence in his voice, like he had already predicted exactly how she would react. Arrogant bastard. Her pen tapped against the edge of the desk. Tap, tap, tap. "You're done writing me letters." His response echoed back into her memory. "Are you sure about that?" Charlotte blew out a slow breath. "Fuck," she muttered quietly. Across the glass wall of her office, the bullpen hummed with its usual chaos. Phones ringing, editors arguing over cover designs, assistants carrying stacks of manuscripts like overworked mules. Normal, routine. Yet Charlotte felt like someone had shifted the angle of the world just slightly, and she hated that she found it interesting. She dragged a hand through her hair, loosening the knot at the back of her head. Dark strands fell around her shoulders, and she immediately tied them back again. Tighter this time. The motion made her pause. "You walked into the office this morning with your hair tied back in that loose knot you think looks professional. It doesn't. It makes the line of your neck look distracting as hell." Charlotte stared at the manuscript in front of her. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. The man had gotten into her head. That was unacceptable. Charlotte stood up abruptly and stepped out of her office. Claire looked up from the reception desk. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," Charlotte said. Her voice came out crisp and sharp, which usually meant she was about to dismantle someone's terrible idea in a meeting. Instead, she walked straight toward the staircase again. Claire blinked. "Charlotte, you just came from up there." "I know." Charlotte climbed the stairs with the steady rhythm of someone who had made up her mind. Enough. If Noah Whitaker thought this was some kind of entertaining game, he was about to discover that she did not play by anyone else's rules. The executive floor was quieter now than earlier in the morning. Charlotte marched down the hallway and pushed open his office door without knocking. Noah looked up again. He was standing this time, leaning over the edge of his desk while reading something on a tablet. His sleeves were still rolled up. The top button of his shirt had been undone, revealing the faintest glimpse of collarbone. Charlotte noticed that immediately, which annoyed her even more. "Well," he said calmly, "that didn't take long." Charlotte shut the door behind her. "Don't flatter yourself." His gray eyes flickered with amusement. "Hard not to when you keep coming back." Charlotte crossed the room and planted both hands on his desk again. "Let's clarify something," she said. "Go ahead. You don't get to decide the rules here." Noah leaned back slightly, studying her. Interesting choice of words. Her eyes narrowed. "You've been watching me, writing creepy little letters like some kind of voyeur. They weren't creepy. They were invasive." He shrugged. "Fair." Charlotte exhaled sharply. "What exactly did you expect would happen when I found out?" Noah tilted his head. "Honestly? Yes, I expected you to get angry," Charlotte blinked. "Well, congratulations." "And then," he continued calmly, "I expected you to get curious," she scoffed. "I'm not curious." He raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yes." "Then why are you here again?" Charlotte opened her mouth, then closed it. Damn him, his gaze held her steadily. "You could have stayed downstairs," Noah said. "You didn't." Her jaw tightened. "I came up here to end this." "Did you?" "Yes, because it looks a lot like you came up here to confront me." Charlotte leaned closer. "And what if I did?" The space between them shrank. She could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes now, the texture of the stubble along his jaw, the subtle rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. He smelled good, warm, clean, infuriating. Noah didn't move. "If you wanted this to end," he said quietly, "you could have reported me." Charlotte held his gaze. "You keep saying that like you want me to." "I don't." "Then stop suggesting it." A slow smile touched his mouth. "You're very intense when you're annoyed." "You should see me when I'm furious." "I'd probably enjoy that." Charlotte straightened abruptly. "You're impossible." "I've been told." She turned away from the desk and walked toward the windows. The view from his office stretched across the skyline, sunlight bouncing off towers and glass. Charlotte crossed her arms. "You think you know me," she said. "I know enough." "No," she said firmly. "You've been watching fragments. That doesn't mean you understand anything." Noah's voice came from behind her. "Then enlighten me." Charlotte turned. He had moved around the desk now, standing closer, too close. The man had an irritating way of filling a room simply by existing in it. Tall, broad-shouldered, confident without even trying. Charlotte refused to step back. "You think I enjoy being challenged," she said. "I know you do." "You're wrong, am I?" "Yes." Noah studied her face for a moment. Then he said something that made her stomach flip unexpectedly. "You enjoy it when the person doing the challenging can actually keep up." Charlotte froze. His eyes didn't leave hers. "You're used to people folding under pressure," he continued. "Authors desperate for approval, editors who second-guess themselves." His voice stayed calm. "But when someone actually pushes back..." A faint spark flickered in Charlotte's chest. "You lean in." Silence filled the room. Charlotte hated how accurate that sounded. "You're making a lot of assumptions," she said. "Am I?" "Yes." Noah took another step forward. Now they stood only a few feet apart. The tension between them had thickened into something almost physical. "You came back here," he said quietly, "because part of you wanted to know if I'd keep pushing." Charlotte's pulse ticked faster. "That's not why I came back." "Then why?" She opened her mouth. No words came out. The truth hovered somewhere dangerous and unspoken. Noah watched her carefully. "You know," he said slowly, "most people would be intimidated right now." "By what?" "By the fact that I've been paying attention to them this closely." Charlotte laughed softly. "You clearly don't know me very well." "I'm learning." His gaze flicked briefly down her body. Not crudely, not rushed, just a slow assessing glance. Heat climbed up her spine. Charlotte crossed her arms tighter. "Enjoy the view?" He met her eyes again. "Yes." Her breath caught. God damn him. He said things so simply, like he didn't even consider pretending otherwise. "You're infuriating," she said. "So you keep mentioning." Charlotte studied him. "You think this is flirting." "I think this is interesting." "And if I walk out right now, then you walk out. And if I report you, you might. And if I tell the board you've been stalking an employee?" Noah's expression didn't change. "You could." Charlotte stared at him. "You're way too calm about possibility." His shoulders lifted slightly. "I know you won't." "Why the hell not?" "Because if you wanted to destroy me professionally," he said quietly, "you would have done it already." Charlotte felt something twist in her chest. "And because," he added, "you're enjoying this more than you want to admit." Her heart thumped harder. "That's bullshit." "Is it?" She took a step closer. "Don't pretend you understand me. Then explain it." Charlotte leaned toward him. Their faces were only inches apart now. "You think this is some kind of game," she said softly. "It is." "No," she said. "It's you pushing boundaries because you're bored." Noah's eyes darkened slightly. "Maybe. And you assume I'll keep playing along." "Probably." Charlotte held his gaze. "You're very confident." "I usually have a reason to be." For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension in the room vibrated like a live wire. Charlotte became acutely aware of everything. The steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body so close to hers, the faint scent of cedar and clean fabric. Her voice dropped lower. "You want to push me?" Noah's eyes held hers. "Yes." Charlotte's pulse pounded. She stepped back suddenly. The movement broke the moment like glass shattering. "Not today," she said. Noah's eyebrow lifted. "No." Charlotte turned toward the door. But before she opened it, she glanced back. His gaze followed her every movement. "You don't get to control the pace of this," she said. He smiled slightly. "We'll see." Charlotte opened the door. "Don't write me another letter." She walked out without waiting for his response. The hallway felt cooler after the intensity of his office. Charlotte made it halfway to the stairs before she realized something unsettling. Her heart was still racing. Not from anger, from something far more complicated. Behind her, inside the corner office, Noah Whitaker stood near the desk, watching the door she had just walked through. A slow grin spread across his face. "Yeah," he murmured quietly. "She's definitely going to come back." Chapter 4. Pressure Points. Charlotte spent the rest of the afternoon trying very hard not to think about Noah Whitaker, which was a spectacular failure. Every time she opened a manuscript, her attention slid sideways. Every time someone knocked on her office door, she half expected to see his tall frame leaning casually against the glass like he owned the entire goddamn building. Which, technically, he did. "Focus," she muttered under her breath. The manuscript in front of her was supposed to be a gritty crime thriller. Instead, she had reread the same paragraph 5 times and retained exactly none of it. Her mind kept drifting back upstairs. The look in his eyes, the calm way he spoke, like nothing about their conversation had been remotely unusual. "You came back here because part of you wanted to know if I'd keep pushing." Charlotte leaned back in her chair and pressed her fingers against her temples. "Arrogant prick," she murmured. Unfortunately, arrogance suited him. That thought irritated her more than anything else. A knock tapped against her half-open door. "Charlotte?" She looked up. Evan stood there, one of the junior editors, holding a stack of pages like a shield. He was young, mid-20s maybe, skinny build, with nervous energy practically vibrating off him. "Yeah?" she said. "I wanted to get your thoughts on the Harper manuscript before we send revisions." Charlotte blinked once. "Right, sure." Evan stepped inside and handed her the pages. Their fingers brushed briefly. The poor guy nearly jumped. Charlotte noticed immediately. She always noticed. Evan cleared his throat. "So, Chapter 12 felt a little slow to me, but I wasn't sure if that was just pacing or if the character arc is..." "Evan?" He stopped talking. "Yes?" Charlotte held his gaze. "You're overthinking it." "I am?" "Yes." She flipped through the manuscript quickly. "The character conflict is fine. The pacing just needs tightening. Cut about 3 pages of internal monologue and you'll fix the problem." Evan stared at her. "Oh. Also," she added, "tell Harper to stop describing every goddamn coffee cup in the scene." A small laugh escaped him. "Right?" Charlotte handed the manuscript back. "You're doing fine," she said. Evan nodded quickly. "Thanks, Charlotte." He hesitated for a moment, like he wanted to say something else. Then he left. Charlotte watched the door close. Her gaze drifted across the office again. Several people worked quietly at their desks. Assistants whispered over a spreadsheet. Someone laughed near the copy machine. Normal. Routine. Predictable. Then Charlotte's phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message from Claire. "Claire. Mr. Whitaker asked if you're free at 6. Charlotte stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. "For what?" The reply came almost immediately. "He didn't say." Charlotte exhaled slowly. Of course he didn't. She looked at the clock, 5:12 p.m. The office would start emptying soon. Her thumb hovered again. "Tell him I'm busy." She hit send. A moment later, another message popped up. "Claire, I already did." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Then another message arrived. "He said to tell you that's a shame." Charlotte leaned back in her chair. Of course he did. The man was insufferable. And yet, her mind replayed the way he had stood close to her earlier, the quiet confidence in his voice, the deliberate way he watched her reactions. Charlotte grabbed a pen and twirled it between her fingers. "Get a grip," she muttered. She stood up and stretched slightly, rolling tension out of her shoulders. Outside her office window, the sky had begun to darken. Evening light turned the city gold and shadowed. One by one, the editors began packing up. By 5:45, the bullpen had thinned considerably. Charlotte closed her laptop. She could leave, go home, pour a drink. Forget about Noah Whitaker and his smug, infuriating grin. Instead, she found herself standing up and walking toward the stairs again. "God damn it," she muttered quietly. The executive floor was nearly empty now. Charlotte walked down the hallway and stopped outside his office. The door stood slightly open. She could see him inside. Noah sat on the edge of his desk this time, jacket off, sleeves still rolled up. A glass of amber liquid rested in his hand. He looked up before she even knocked. Their eyes met across the room. A slow smile curved his mouth. "I was wondering how long it would take." Charlotte pushed the door open. "Don't start, Hal." He lifted his glass slightly. "Drink?" "No." She stepped inside anyway. Noah watched her closely. "You said you were busy." "I changed my mind." "Clearly." Charlotte crossed her arms. "What did you want at 6? Noah shrugged lightly. "Conversation." "That's vague." "Intentionally." Charlotte glanced around the office. The city lights glowed through the windows now. The room felt quieter at night, more private somehow. "You could have just said that," she said. "Would you have come?" Well, she hesitated. "Probably not." "Exactly." He took another slow sip of his drink. Charlotte noticed the way his throat moved when he swallowed. She immediately looked away. "You enjoy manipulating situations," she said. "I enjoy observing outcomes." "That's a fancy way of saying the same thing." He chuckled softly. "You're still annoyed. You've been antagonizing me for 2 days." "True." Charlotte moved closer to the desk. "You like pushing people." "I like seeing what they're capable of." "And you think I'm some kind of experiment." "No." His voice lowered slightly. "I think you're interesting." Charlotte's pulse ticked faster. "That word again." "It fits." She leaned against the desk across from him. "So what now?" "What do you mean?" "You got your confrontation, your little psychological chess match." Her eyes held his steadily. "Now what?" Noah studied her face for a moment. The room had grown very quiet. "Now," he said slowly, "we see what happens when you stop pretending you're not curious." Charlotte scoffed softly. "You keep insisting that." "Because it's obvious." She tilted her head. "You're very confident about how my brain works." "No." His gray eyes flicked briefly down her body again. "Just about how you react to pressure." Heat crept up her spine again. "You think I'm predictable. I think you're controlled." "And that's a problem?" "No." His voice softened slightly. "It's impressive." Charlotte blinked. The compliment caught her off guard. Then he added quietly, "But control cracks eventually." Their eyes locked. Charlotte felt the air shift again, the same charged tension as earlier, but deeper now. More dangerous. "You're obsessed with that idea," she said, "because it's true." "Maybe." She stepped closer without fully realizing it. The distance between them shrank again. Noah didn't move. "You know what I think?" Charlotte said softly. "What?" "I think you like the idea of being the one who pushes someone over that edge." He held her gaze. "Maybe." "And you assume I'll let you." His mouth curved slightly. "You keep showing up." Charlotte felt her breath slow. They stood very close now. Close enough that she could see the tiny scar along his eyebrow. Close enough to feel the warmth of his body. "You're very sure of yourself," she murmured. "I usually am." She tilted her head slightly. "And if I push back?" His eyes darkened just a little. "I'd expect you to." Charlotte studied his face. Then, very slowly, she reached out and picked up the glass from his desk. The amber liquid swirled slightly as she lifted it. She took a small sip, strong, warm. Her eyes stayed on his the entire time. When she set the glass back down, she said quietly, "Careful what you wish for, Whitaker." A slow smile spread across his face. "Oh," he said, "I am." Chapter 5, Heat Under the Surface. Charlotte slept badly that night. Not the restless kind of sleep that came from stress or too much caffeine. This was something more irritating. Every time she drifted off her mind, replayed the same damn moment from earlier that evening. Standing in Noah Whitaker's office, the city lights glowing behind him, the quiet intensity in his gray eyes as she lifted his glass and took a sip without asking. "Careful what you wish for, Whitaker." She groaned softly and rolled over in bed. "Jesus," she muttered into the pillow. The man had gotten under her skin, which was a problem. Charlotte Greene had built her career on staying 3 steps ahead of everyone around her. Authors tried to charm her. Executives tried to pressure her. Agents tried to negotiate around her. None of it worked, because Charlotte never let things become personal. Until now. She stared up at the ceiling. Her brain replayed the look on his face when she said those words, that slow smile, like he had been waiting for exactly that response. "Arrogant bastard," she murmured. Unfortunately, the memory also came with another detail. The heat in her chest when he stood close to her. The steady confidence in the way he watched her, like he wasn't intimidated by her sharp mouth or quick temper in the slightest. Charlotte exhaled slowly. Sleep wasn't coming back tonight. She reached for the glass of water on her bedside table and took a long drink. Her phone buzzed faintly. Charlotte frowned. Who the hell was texting at 2 in the morning? She picked up the phone. One new message, unknown number. Her stomach did a small, irritating flip before she even opened it. She already knew. The message contained only one sentence. "You drank my whiskey. That feels like progress." Charlotte stared at the screen. Then she laughed. Actually laughed out loud in the quiet apartment. "Unbelievable." Her fingers moved quickly. "You gave me the glass." The response came almost instantly. "You took the glass." Charlotte rolled her eyes. Semantics. A moment passed, then another message appeared. "You didn't walk away tonight." Charlotte leaned back against the pillows. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. He wasn't wrong. She could have left. Instead, she stayed. Instead, she stood there in his office trading verbal punches like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her fingers typed before she fully decided what to say. I like to understand the people who annoy me. The typing bubble appeared immediately. Annoyed is an interesting word for the way you were looking at me. Charlotte's eyebrows lifted. Cocky son of a bitch. She murmured. She typed again. You're imagining things. A pause, then another message. You walked into my office twice today. Charlotte stared at that sentence. She exhaled slowly. Curiosity doesn't equal attraction. Their reply came after a slightly longer pause. You keep telling yourself that. Charlotte smirked slightly, despite herself. Her finger snapped again. And you keep pretending this is some psychological experiment. The typing bubble appeared again. It lingered longer this time. Then the message arrived. No. Charlotte frowned. Slightly. Another message followed immediately. If it were an experiment, I wouldn't be texting you at 2 in the morning. Her pulses skipped once. She read the message twice. Then she typed slowly. What would you call it then? A long pause followed. Charlotte watched the screen. Finally, their reply came. Something far less controlled. Her breath caught. Damn him. Event through text, the man had a way of making things feel charged. She tossed the phone onto the bed beside her and stared at the ceiling again. Her brain told her to ignore him. Block the number. Go back to sleep? Instead, she picked the phone up again. You enjoy stirring shit up. Their reply came almost immediately, only when the other person can handle it. Charlotte's lips curved slightly. And you think I can't? Several seconds passed. Then their response appeared. I think you might enjoy it more than you admit. Charlotte felt that same slow heat crawl down her spine. She rolled onto her side, staring at the screen. Her fingers moved again. Careful. Your ego is showing. Noah's answer came back quickly. You walked into my office tonight and drank from my glass while staring me down. Another message followed before she could reply. My ego is fine. Charlotte laughed softly. God, famine was infuriating. She hesitated before typing again. You really believe this is going somewhere interesting? His reply appeared almost immediately. Don't you? Charlotte stared at the message. For a moment she didn't answer, because the honest response was complicated. She should not be enjoying this. She should not be lying in bed at 2 in the morning messages with the CEO of her company like some kind of flirtatious duel. And yet, her pulse was steady and alive in a way it hadn't been in a long time. Finally, she typed, I think you're at trouble. The typing bubble appeared again, then disappeared, then came back. Finally, the message arrived. You walked into it anyway. Charlotte huffed out a quiet breath. Fair enough. Her phone buzzed again, another message. Sleep, Charlotte. You look vicious when you're tired. Her eyebrow lifted. You've seen me tired? The reply came quickly, this morning. After your third cup of coffee, Charlotte shook her head. Jesus. She typed again. You pay way too much attention. Several seconds passed. Then his final message appeared. Only to things worth watching. Charlotte stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she set the phone down again. Her apartment was quiet. Outside the city hummed softly through the windows. For the first time that night, she felt her body relax slightly. Sleep crept back slowly. But just before she drifted off, one thought slipped through her mind. Noah Whitaker was absolutely right about one thing. This situation was already getting interesting. And deep down, whether she admitted it or not, she was looking forward to seeing where the hell it went next. Chapter 6. Friction. Charlotte walked into the office the next morning with the faint headache of someone who had slept just enough to function and not nearly enough to feel rested, which, of course, was Noah Whitaker's fault. She hated that realization. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she crossed the bullpen. The office was already buzzing. Phones ringing, keyboards clattering, assistants moving quickly between desks with the focused energy of people trying to stay ahead of deadlines. Charlotte moved through it like a blade through water, direct, efficient, unbothered, at least on the surface. Morning, Charlotte, Claire called from reception. Morning. Claire tilted her head slightly. You look tired. Charlotte gave her a flat look. Say that again and you'll spend the afternoon proofreading romance manuscripts from 2003. Claire grinned. Never mind. Charlotte continued into her office. The moment the door closed behind her, she dropped her bag onto the chair and leaned back against the desk. Her phone buzzed immediately. Charlotte sighed. You're insufferable, she muttered as she picked it up. One new message. Noah, you look good when you're annoyed. Charlotte stared at the screen. Then she typed. Are you spying on my office again? 3 dots appeared. No. A pause. Another message followed. I'm walking past your glass wall right now. Charlotte's head snapped up. Sure enough, through the transparent panels, she saw him moving down the hallway outside. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark shirt again, sleeves rolled up. He didn't even glance toward her office as he walked past. Her phone buzzed again. That knot in your hair is tighter today. Charlotte blinked. Then she laughed quietly. The man was impossible. She typed back. Try focusing on your actual job. His reply came instantly. Noah, this is my job. Charlotte rolled her eyes. Harassing employees? Noah. Observing talent. Charlotte snorted softly. Before she could answer, someone knocked on her door. Evan again. Charlotte, do you have a second? She set the phone down. Come in. Evan stepped inside holding a different manuscript this time. His nervous energy returned full force. Sorry to bother you again, but I had a question about the Reynolds submission. Charlotte motioned toward the chair. Sit. He did. As he started explaining the pacing issue, Charlotte forced herself to concentrate. Focus.work, professionalism. That was the goal. Except halfway through Evan's explanation, her phone buzzed again on the desk. Her eyes flicked toward it automatically. Evan noticed. Sorry, am I interrupting something? No, Charlotte said quickly. Continue. But the phone buzzed again and again. Finally, Charlotte grabbed it with a sigh. 3 new messages. Noah, you're frowning. Whoever you're talking to just said something stupid. Noah, your left eyebrow does that little twitch when you're trying not to correct someone. Charlotte stared at the screen. Then she slowly looked up. Evan blinked nervously. Is something wrong? Charlotte held his gaze for a moment. Then she said calmly, No, you're doing fine. Her phone buzzed again. Noah, there it is. Charlotte clenched her jaw. She typed quickly. Stop watching my office. A pause. Then Noah, come upstairs and make me. Charlotte felt a slow pulse of heat move through her chest. She locked the phone and set it down. Okay, she said to Evan. The issue with Reynolds is simple. He leaned forward. What is it? The middle section drags because the protagonist has no consequences for his decisions. Evan nodded rapidly. Right, that makes sense. Charlotte pointed to the manuscript. Flate cut the redundant scenes and forced the character into an actual dilemma. Conflict drives pacing. Evan looked impressed. Got it. He stood. Thanks again, Charlotte. No problem. Once he left, Charlotte stared at her phone again. The last message sat there waiting. Come upstairs and make me. Her lips curved slightly. Jesus Christ. She picked up the phone. Charlotte. Careful. That sounds like a challenge. The response arrived almost instantly. Noah, it is. Charlotte leaned back in her chair. You're bored. I'm curious. Same thing. 3 dots appeared again. Then Noah, you haven't said no. Charlotte stared at the screen. Her pulse ticked faster. Then she stood up. Fuck it. She grabbed her phone and walked out of her office. Claire looked up. Everything okay? Perfect, Charlotte said, and headed for the stairs. Noah's office door was open. He stood near the window this time, sleeves rolled up again, one hand tucked casually into his pocket. He turned as she walked in, gray eyes immediately sharp with interest. That took less time than yesterday. Charlotte closed the door behind her. Your texting is irritating. Effective, though. She crossed the room slowly. You're watching my office like a creep. I have a clear line of sight from the conference room. That doesn't make it better. Noah smiled faintly. You still came upstairs? Charlotte stopped a few feet from him. Yes. Silence stretched between them. The tension from yesterday hadn't faded. If anything, it felt thicker now, more deliberate. You enjoy pushing buttons, she said. Only yours. That's not flattering? It wasn't meant to be. Charlotte studied his face. You really don't get intimidated. Why? Noah tilted his head slightly. Should I? Most people do. I'm not most people. Charlotte scoffed softly. Clearly. He stepped closer, just one step, but it shortened the distance enough to shift the air between them. You're curious again, he said quietly. I'm evaluating a situation. That's a fancy way of saying the same thing. Charlotte crossed her arms. You've been analyzing me for days. Observing. Same difference. Noah's gaze moved slowly over her face, then down her posture, then back to her eyes. Not quite. Charlotte's pulse quickened slightly. You really believe you have me figured out? I believe you like control. That's hardly a revelation. And I believe you're intrigued by anyone who doesn't immediately hand it to you. Charlotte held his gaze. You think you're that person. I know I am, she laughed quietly. You're very sure of yourself. I usually have evidence. Charlotte stepped closer. Now they stood only a few inches apart. You enjoy this dynamic, she said softly. Yes. Why? His voice lowered. Because you don't back down. Charlotte felt a slow warmth curl through her chest. That doesn't mean I'm interested in whatever game you're playing. Maybe not. He held her gaze steadily. But you're definitely playing. Charlotte leaned slightly toward him. Careful, Whitaker. Why? You might discover you're not the one setting the pace here. A slow grin spread across his face. I'd like to see you try. For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension between them hummed like a live wire. Charlotte became aware of everything again. The faint scent of his cologne, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body this close. Her voice dropped lower. You're used to people responding to your authority. Yes, I don't. I noticed. Charlotte reached past him suddenly. Her fingers brushed the desk behind him as she grabbed the same whiskey glass from yesterday. She held it up slightly. Still drinking during work hours? Noah watched her, occasionally. She set it back down deliberately. You're reckless. Sometimes. Charlotte's eyes narrowed slightly. You enjoy the tension. I do. So do you. She didn't answer immediately, because he wasn't entirely wrong. Finally, she said quietly, Don't assume you know what I enjoy. Noah's voice came back just as soft. I'd rather find out. Charlotte held his gaze for another long second. Then she stepped back. The sudden space between them felt colder. Back to work, she said. Already? Yes. She turned toward the door, but before leaving, she glanced back. You're still an arrogant bastard. Noah smiled slowly. And you still came upstairs. Charlotte rolled her eyes, but as she walked back down the hallway, her pulse was racing again, and she had the distinct feeling that whatever this strange, volatile tension between them was becoming, it was only getting started. Chapter 7. Fault Lines. By mid-afternoon, Charlotte had officially reached the point where pretending Noah Whitaker wasn't inside her head had become a complete waste of effort. The man had turned distraction into a goddamn art form. She sat at her desk with a red pen hovering over a manuscript page while her thoughts kept drifting back upstairs. The way he looked at her, calm and unapologetically interested. The deliberate closeness every time they spoke, like he knew exactly how much tension he was creating. Focus, she muttered again. The manuscript did not deserve the level of violence she was currently applying to it. Charlotte scratched a line through 3 paragraphs, then another. Then she leaned back and exhaled slowly. The office hummed around her. Afternoon light filtered through the glass walls, softening the edges of the room. Conversations murmured beyond her door. Normal. Everything normal. Except she knew damn well that somewhere upstairs Noah Whitaker was working like nothing about their increasingly charged little dynamic was unusual, which irritated her more than anything else. Her phone buzzed. Charlotte looked at it immediately. One message, of course. Noah, you're murdering that manuscript. Charlotte blinked once. Then she stood up and walked straight to the glass wall of her office. She looked toward the conference room down the hall. Sure enough, Noah stood inside with 2 executives seated at the table. Papers scattered across the surface. He wasn't looking at her, but he was smiling slightly. Charlotte checked the message again. You unbelievable bastard, she murmured. She typed, Charlotte, you're in a meeting. A moment later, her phone buzzed. Noah, and? Charlotte stared at the screen. Across the hall, he lifted a pen and gestured toward a document while speaking to the other 2 people at the table. Calm. Professional. Meanwhile, he was texting her under the table like a teenager. Her phone buzzed again. You frowned again. Charlotte crossed her arms, then typed. Charlotte, pay attention to your meeting. A few seconds passed. Then another message arrived. I am? Charlotte glanced up again. He hadn't looked toward her office once, which meant the man was somehow keeping track of both conversations. That should not have been impressive, but it was. Her phone buzzed again. Noah, come to the conference room. Charlotte stared at the message. Her eyebrow lifted. Why? A moment later. I want your opinion on something. Charlotte looked up again. This time he did glance briefly toward her office, just a flicker. Then he returned his attention to the meeting. Her pulse ticked slightly faster. She typed back. Charlotte, you have 2 senior executives in there. Noah, and the best editor in the building. Charlotte rolled her eyes. But she grabbed her notebook and stepped out of her office anyway. The conference room door opened with a soft click. Three sets of eyes looked toward her. Noah leaned back slightly in his chair. Perfect timing, he said calmly. Charlotte stepped inside. The two executives nodded politely. One was Richard Hale, Whitaker's business partner. The other was a marketing director, Charlotte vaguely recognized. What's going on? She asked. Noah slid a document across the table. New manuscript acquisition. We're debating whether the ending works. Charlotte picked up the pages. The room fell quiet as she skimmed quickly. It took less than a minute. Then she dropped the document back on the table. The ending is weak. The marketing director blinked. Really? Yes. Charlotte tapped the page. The conflict builds beautifully for 300 pages, and then the author resolves it with a convenient emotional speech. Richard leaned forward. What would you change? Charlotte met his gaze. Force the protagonist to make an actual sacrifice. She pointed to a section halfway down the page. Right now, the character gets everything he wants without paying a price. Noah watched her carefully. And that's a problem, he said. Yes. Charlotte leaned slightly against the table. Readers invest in struggle. If the character walks away clean, the story feels dishonest. Richard nodded slowly. That makes sense. The marketing director scribbled notes. Interesting. Noah's eyes stayed on Charlotte. Anything else? Charlotte flipped one page back. The tension between the two leads is excellent, though. Her voice lowered slightly. The author understands how to build friction. Something flickered in Noah's expression. Charlotte noticed immediately. Then she continued calmly. But the payoff needs to match the build-up. Richard leaned back in his chair. All right, that settles it. He glanced at Noah. We push for revisions. Noah nodded. Agreed. Charlotte closed the folder. Anything else? Richard stood. That was helpful. Thanks, Charlotte. The marketing director followed him out. Within seconds, the conference room was quiet again. Only Charlotte and Noah remained. The door closed behind the others with a soft click. Charlotte turned toward him. You didn't need me for that. No, he said. She crossed her arms. You wanted an excuse. Yes, Charlotte snorted softly. At least you're honest. Noah leaned back in his chair. You're good at what you do, obviously, and you enjoy dismantling weak arguments. Yes, his gaze moved slowly over her again. You're also enjoying this situation. Charlotte rolled her eyes. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. She leaned against the table. You dragged me into a meeting just to get me in the same room again. Yes, your efficiency is terrifying. Thank you. Charlotte laughed quietly. You're impossible. Probably. Silence stretched between them. Then Noah stood up. The movement shifted the atmosphere instantly. He walked around the table. Charlotte stayed where she was. Charlotte, he said quietly. Yes, you could stop coming upstairs. Her eyebrow lifted. I could, but you don't. No. He stepped closer. The distance between them shrank again. You keep saying this is curiosity, he said. It is. And nothing else. Charlotte held his gaze. Noah's voice softened slightly. Then why does your pulse change every time I step closer? Charlotte froze. Her heartbeat had indeed quickened, and the bastard had noticed. You're imagining things. No, his gray eyes held her steadily. I'm very good at observation. Charlotte exhaled slowly. You're pushing your luck. Maybe. He stepped another inch closer. Now the tension between them felt almost tangible. Charlotte could feel the heat of him, the quiet intensity. You enjoy testing boundaries, she said. I enjoy seeing where they actually are. And if I move them, I'd expect you to. Charlotte studied his face. Then she said quietly, You're not the only one who likes pressure, Whitaker. A slow smile appeared. I know. Her voice dropped lower. But pressure breaks things. Sometimes. They stood inches apart now. Charlotte became painfully aware of every detail. The faint roughness of stubble along his jaw, the steady rise of his chest, the calm confidence in his posture. Careful, she murmured. Why? You might discover you're the one losing control. Noah's eyes darkened slightly. I doubt that. Charlotte tilted her head. You're very sure. Yes. She smiled slowly. Confidence like that usually means someone hasn't been challenged properly. His voice came back low and steady. Are you offering? Charlotte held his gaze. Then she stepped past him. The movement brushed her shoulder lightly against his chest. The contact lasted less than a second, but the heat of it lingered. She walked toward the door. Before leaving, she glanced back. You wanted friction in that manuscript, she said. Noah watched her carefully. Yes. Charlotte smiled slightly. You've definitely created some. Then she opened the door and walked out. Behind her, Noah Whitaker stood very still in the quiet conference room. The faint warmth where her shoulder had brushed him hadn't faded. And for the first time since this strange, volatile dynamic started, he had the distinct feeling that Charlotte Greene might actually be right. This pressure was building toward something, and when it finally cracked, neither of them would walk away unchanged. Chapter 8. The Breaking Point. Charlotte made it exactly 3 hours before she started thinking about him again. 3. Which, considering how the last few days had gone, was practically a goddamn miracle. She sat in her office with the door closed, red pen moving across the pages of a manuscript with ruthless efficiency. Outside the glass wall, the bullpen buzzed with the controlled chaos of late afternoon. Deadlines approaching, phones ringing, assistants running coffee like oxygen tanks for overworked editors, work, structure, logic. Charlotte preferred her world that way. Except lately, something had shifted. Noah Whitaker had shifted it. She drew a sharp line through a paragraph and scribbled a note in the margin. Cut this entire scene. Her phone buzzed. Charlotte froze. Then she sighed. Of course. She glanced down. Noah. Still thinking about the meeting? Charlotte snorted quietly. She typed back. Charlotte, still spying on my office? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. No. A second later, another message followed. Noah, I'm thinking about when you walked past me. Charlotte's pulse ticked faster. Her eyes flicked briefly to the glass wall. Nobody was watching, she typed. That wasn't intentional. The reply came quickly. It didn't feel accidental. Charlotte leaned back slowly in her chair. The memory replayed in her head, whether she wanted it to or not. Her shoulder brushing his chest. The solid warmth of him. The way neither of them had moved for that half second. Her phone buzzed again. Noah, you knew exactly what you were doing. Charlotte rolled her eyes. But heat curled slowly through her chest anyway. Charlotte, your ego is enormous. A pause. Then you like that. Charlotte actually laughed out loud this time. God, you're insufferable. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed. Careful. Confidence like that usually ends badly. 3 dots appeared. Then his message arrived. Noah, you haven't proven that yet. Charlotte stared at the screen. Her pulse quickened. Charlotte, are you challenging me? A pause. Noah, maybe. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. Something dangerous sparked in her chest. She typed slowly. Your office. 10 minutes. Then she set the phone down before he could reply. Noah Whitaker was leaning against the edge of his desk when she walked in. The late evening light spilled through the tall windows behind him, turning the skyline gold and shadowed. He looked up as the door closed. A slow, knowing smile curved his mouth. Took you 9. Charlotte crossed the room. You timed it? Yes. Jesus. Noah pushed away from the desk. You told me to be here. I didn't say wait for me like a stopwatch. I was curious. Charlotte stopped a few feet away. The room felt quieter than usual, the office mostly empty now, after hours creeping in. You like testing people, she said. I like seeing what they'll do. You've been pushing this dynamic all week. Yes. Charlotte crossed her arms. So now we test something. His eyebrow lifted. Something? Yes. Noah studied her carefully. You look serious. I am. He stepped closer, just one step, enough to shift the air between them again. And what exactly are we testing? Charlotte held his gaze. Whether you're as confident as you pretend, a slow grin appeared. I usually am. Good. Yes, Charlotte stepped forward. Now they stood very close, close enough that the tension between them hummed like electricity. You like pressure, she said quietly. Yes. You like challenging people. Yes. Her voice dropped lower. So let's see how you handle it. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Charlotte reached out. Her hand caught the front of his shirt. Not rough, not gentle either, just deliberate. Noah's breath slowed slightly. Well, he murmured. That's new. Charlotte's fingers tightened slightly in the fabric. You've been watching me for days. Yes. You've been analyzing every reaction. Yes. Her eyes held his. Your turn. Before he could respond, she pulled him forward. The distance between them vanished. Hermothmethus. Hard. Confident. Charlotte kissed the way she did everything else. Direct. Unapologetic. No hesitation. For a half second, Noah didn't move. Then his hands found her waist, and suddenly the tension that had been building for days snapped tight. The kiss deepened instantly. Heat flared between them like a match striking gasoline. Charlotte felt the solid strength in his grip as she pulled her closer. Not controlling, but definitely not passive. His mouth moved against hers with the same calm confidence he carried everywhere else, which only made her push harder. Her fingers slid from his shirt to the back of his neck. "Still confident?" she murmured against his mouth. His voice came back rougher now. "You started this." "I know." Then she kissed him again, slower this time, more deliberate. Noah's hand slid slightly up her back, steady and warm. The contact sent a sharp pulse of heat down her spine. For a moment, the entire world narrowed to the space between them. The quiet office, the fading sunlight, the controlled intensity of two people who had been circling each other for days finally colliding. Charlotte pulled back just enough to look at him. His breathing had changed, slightly heavier, his gray eyes darker now. "Well," she said softly, "that answers one question." "What question?" Charlotte's lips curved slightly. "You're not immune to pressure." Noah studied her face, then his mouth tilted into a slow smile. "You think that was pressure?" Charlotte blinked. "Oh?" His hand slid lightly along her waist, not possessive, but very aware. That felt more like curiosity. Charlotte's pulse jumped again. "Curiosity?" "Yes." His voice lowered slightly. "Pressure would be something else." Charlotte held his gaze. "And what would that look like?" Noah leaned closer, their faces inches apart again. "You're still here." Charlotte's breath slowed. "You're not exactly pushing me away." "No," his voice softened. "Neither are you." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Charlotte stepped back, just enough to break the contact. She watched him carefully. "You're still arrogant." "Yes, but that was a good reaction." Noah chuckled softly. "Glad to hear it." Charlotte walked toward the door, her pulse still racing slightly, but her voice came out calm. "You wanted to see what happened when someone pushed back." Noah leaned casually against the desk again. "Yes." Charlotte glanced over her shoulder. "Well," she said, "now you know." Then she opened the door and walked out, leaving Noah Whitaker alone in the quiet office, still feeling the lingering heat of her kiss, and realizing something that made his slow grin return. Charlotte Greene hadn't just pushed back. She had escalated the entire game, and if this was the direction things were heading, neither of them was going to stop anytime soon. Chapter 9. Aftershock, Charlotte made it halfway down the executive hallway before the reality of what she had just done slammed into her like a freight train. She had kissed Noah Whitaker. Not accidentally, not lightly. She had grabbed his shirt and pulled him into it like she had every intention of doing exactly that. "Jesus," she muttered under her breath. Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked faster, heading for the staircase. The executive wing was nearly empty at this hour, the quiet amplifying the rapid beat of her pulse. She should feel regret, embarrassment, professional panic. Instead, what she felt was something far more dangerous. A sharp electric thrill. Charlotte gripped the stair rail as she descended, the cool metal grounding her slightly. "Get it together," she murmured, because whatever that moment upstairs had been, it changed the entire dynamic between them. The tension that had been simmering all week had finally snapped into something real, and now there was no pretending otherwise. Upstairs, Noah Whitaker hadn't moved for several seconds after she walked out. He stood near his desk, one hand braced against the polished wood, staring at the closed office door. Then he laughed quietly. Not loudly, just a low, surprised sound. "Well," he murmured to the empty room. That escalated. He ran a hand slowly through his dark hair, replaying the moment in sharp detail. Charlotte's fingers grabbing his shirt. The deliberate way she pulled him forward, the kiss. God, that kiss. It hadn't been hesitant or uncertain. It had been confident, demanding, almost challenging, exactly like everything else about her. Noah exhaled slowly. His pulse had finally started to settle, but the memory still burned under his skin. "You started this," he muttered quietly. Then he straightened and grabbed his phone. One message. Short, direct. Noah. That was not subtle. He hit send. Charlotte had just reached her office when her phone buzzed. She already knew who it was. Of course it was. She leaned against the doorframe and opened the message. That was not subtle. Charlotte laughed softly. Her fingers moved across the screen. Charlotte's subtlety seemed unnecessary. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then his reply arrived. "Noah, you're very sure of yourself." Charlotte pushed the door open and stepped inside. The bullpen outside had mostly emptied now. Only a few late editors remained, hunched over laptops with the exhausted focus of people racing deadlines. She closed the door behind her. Charlotte, you've been provoking me all week. A pause. Then, Noah, and your solution was to kiss me. Charlotte leaned back against her desk. Her lips curved slightly. You weren't complaining. Several seconds passed, then another message arrived. Noah, no. Another pause. Then, I definitely wasn't. Charlotte exhaled slowly, her pulse ticked faster again. She typed, So what now? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, his response came through. That depends. Charlotte frowned slightly. On what? The answer arrived almost immediately. On whether that was a one-time decision. Charlotte stared at the screen. Her brain immediately replayed the kiss again. The solid warmth of him. The way his hands had settled on her waist without hesitation. The way the tension between them had sharpened instead of breaking. She typed slowly. Charlotte, you think I regret it. A pause. Then, Noah. I think you don't do anything impulsively. Charlotte smiled faintly. That was true. Even when things looked spontaneous, she usually knew exactly what she was doing. Her phone buzzed again. Noah, so the question is whether that was a moment. Another message followed. Or a decision. Charlotte tapped the edge of the desk with her fingers. Then she typed. You're over-analyzing. The response came quickly. That's Rich courted quietly. Fair point. Her phone buzzed again. I'm asking because if that was a decision, the message paused. Then another appeared. Noah, I'd like to continue the experiment. Charlotte felt a slow, dangerous heat curl through her chest. Experiment. Of course he'd phrase it that way. She typed back. You're still treating this like a psychological study. 3 dots appeared. Then his reply came. No. Another message followed. I'm treating it like something interesting. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. Her voice would have sounded calmer than she felt if she were speaking aloud. Charlotte, you're assuming I plan to repeat it. The typing bubble appeared immediately. Noah, you walked into my office and kissed me without hesitation. Another message followed. That doesn't strike me as an accident. Charlotte smiled slightly. He had a point. Her phone buzzed again. So I'll ask again. The final message arrived. Noah, was that a moment, Charlotte? Charlotte stared at the screen. The office around her had gone quiet. Most of the lights in the bullpen had dimmed as people packed up for the night. Her pulse beat steadily in her chest. She knew exactly what he was asking, whether the kiss had been a spontaneous reaction or the start of something deliberate. Charlotte pushed away from the desk and walked toward the window. The city stretched out beyond the glass, lights flickering across the skyline. She thought about the way Noah watched her, the calm confidence in his voice, the tension that had been building between them for days. Then she typed, Charlotte, come downstairs. The reply came almost instantly. Noah, your office? Charlotte watched the city lights, then answered, yes. A few seconds passed, then his final message appeared. On my way. Charlotte set the phone down slowly. Her pulse had picked up again, not from nerves, from anticipation, because this time she knew exactly what she was doing, and whatever happened next, it definitely wasn't going to be subtle. Chapter 10. The edge of the fire Charlotte stood by the window of her office with the city glowing beneath her like a restless ocean of light. Her pulse had been steady when she sent the message. Now it was a different story. Not nerves, not fear, anticipation. The kind that tightened slowly under the skin and refused to go away. Her office door clicked open behind her. Charlotte didn't turn immediately. She didn't need to. The quiet shift in the air told her exactly who had stepped inside. Noah Whitaker closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, studying her. The soft lamplight in the room caught the sharp lines of his face. Dark hair slightly disordered again, sleeves rolled back like always. He looked calm, but his eyes were not. Your office, he said quietly. Charlotte turned then. Yes. They watched each other across the room. Something had changed since earlier. The tension that had once been playful now carried weight. The game had crossed a line somewhere between the kiss and that last message. Now it was something else. Noah walked toward her slowly. You said we needed to talk. Charlotte tilted her head slightly. I said come downstairs. Fair. He stopped a few feet away. You also didn't answer my question. Charlotte crossed her arms. I noticed. His gaze moved slowly over her posture. Was that kiss a moment? Charlotte held his eyes. Does it matter? Yes. She studied him carefully. Why? Noah shrugged slightly. Because if it was just a moment, we stop here. Charlotte's eyebrow lifted. And if it wasn't, his voice lowered, then we stop pretending this is harmless. Silence stretched between them. Charlotte exhaled slowly. Nothing about this week has been harmless. No. You've been pushing every button I have. Yes. You watched me for days. I did. And now we're standing here in my office after hours pretending this conversation is professional. Noah's mouth curved slightly. We both know it isn't. Charlotte walked toward her desk. Her fingers brushed lightly across the surface. You asked if that kiss was a moment. Yes. She looked up again. It wasn't. The answer landed in the quiet room like a dropped match. Noah's gaze sharpened slightly. Charlotte continued calmly. You spent days analyzing me. Yes. You pushed until I pushed back. That's true. And now you're surprised it escalated. He chuckled softly. I'm not surprised. Charlotte leaned lightly against the desk. You're curious? Yes. She held his gaze. So am I. That quiet confession shifted the air in the room instantly. Noah stepped closer. Curious about what? Charlotte didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked something else. Are you always this calm? Usually. Even when things get complicated. Yes. Charlotte studied him carefully. Interesting. Why? Because most men would be nervous right now. I'm not most men. That's obvious. He stopped a few feet from her again. You're not most women either. Charlotte smiled faintly. That's also obvious. They stood there for a moment in the quiet office. The city lights flickered through the windows. You realize this is a terrible idea, Charlotte said. Yes. You're the CEO. Yes. I work for you. Yes. And yet here we are. Noah's voice came back low and steady. Yes. Charlotte pushed off the desk and stepped closer. The space between them shrank again, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. You like pressure, she said quietly. I do. And you like testing people. Yes. Charlotte's eyes held his. Here's the problem with that. What problem? You eventually meet someone who pushes back harder than you expect. Noah's mouth curved slightly. I was hoping for that. Charlotte laughed softly. You really don't scare easily. No. Good. Her voice dropped lower. Because this dynamic we've created. She gestured lightly between them. It's not something that stays neat and controlled. I'm aware. You might lose control of it. His gray eyes stayed steady. So might you. Charlotte considered that. Then she nodded slowly. Fair. The tension between them tightened again. Not explosive, just steady heat. You're thinking about that kiss, Noah said quietly. Charlotte didn't deny it. Yes, so am I. She tilted her head slightly. Regret? No. Good. Noah studied her face. You pulled me into that. I did. Why? Charlotte smiled faintly. Because you kept acting like I wouldn't. That's one reason. What's the other? She stepped closer. Now only inches separated them. You wanted to know what happens when someone challenges you. Yes. Charlotte's voice dropped to a near whisper. That was the answer. Noah's gaze darkened slightly. And now? Charlotte held his eyes. Now we figure out whether that was the beginning or the peak. His hand moved slowly to the edge of the desk beside her, close enough that the warmth of him pressed lightly against the air around her. And what do you think? He asked. Charlotte's pulse ticked faster again. I think neither of us backs down easily. That's true. I think you enjoy the tension? I do. And I think, she continued quietly, that this situation is going to get messy if we let it. Noah's mouth curved slightly. That sounds like a warning. It is. And yet you invited me down here. Charlotte smiled. Yes. He studied her carefully. You're dangerous. So are you. Fair. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Noah reached out. Not forceful, not sudden. His fingers brushed lightly against her wrist. Charlotte felt the contact like a spark under her skin. Still curious? He asked. Her voice came back soft. Yes. His thumb shifted slightly against her skin. The touch was small, but it carried weight. Charlotte stepped closer. The distance between them disappeared again. Then we should probably establish something, she murmured. What's that? This doesn't come with rules. Noah's eyes held hers. I wouldn't expect it to. No expectations. Agreed. No guarantees. Of course. Charlotte studied him for another long moment. Then she said quietly, and absolutely no pretending this is simple. Noah's answer came just as calm. It definitely isn't. The tension in the room had softened into something else now, still intense. still dangerous, but no longer uncertain. Charlotte finally stepped back. The space between them returned, but the energy lingered. "Well," she said lightly, "that settles that." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Settles what?" Charlotte walked toward the door and opened it. "That this situation isn't over." Noah laughed quietly. "I had a feeling." She glanced back at him. "And Whitaker?" "Yes?" Charlotte's smile carried a hint of challenge. "You started this whole thing by watching me." "That's true." Her eyes flickered with quiet fire. "Now we see what happens when I start watching you back." Noah's grin returned, slow and unmistakably intrigued. "I'm looking forward to it." Charlotte stepped into the hallway. The office lights had dimmed, the building nearly empty now. Behind her, Noah Whitaker remained standing in the center of the room. Neither of them had tried to define what they had just agreed to. And that was exactly what made it dangerous. Because whatever this volatile, magnetic tension between them had become, it wasn't finished. Not even close.